You have found your way to ChessKid YouTube, and I could not be more excited. But before I show you one of Magnus Carlsen's oldest chess games, make sure you hit subscribe, because I may be showing a few more from when he was a chess kid. Now, he was about 13 when he played this game against his countryman, the Hammer, Jan Ludwig Hammer. Neither was a grandmaster yet, but, well, Magnus threw the hammer down, I have to say. I know it's a used cliche, but I had to use it one more time. Now, we already could say Magnus was destined for greatness because he played the Pirk, or the Perts, if you want to be a little bit more accurate. Well, he's a man after my own heart. I love the Perts. Okay, so after e4, bishop g7, we're going to scoot a few more moves in, and there's actually a series of in-between moves that Magnus plays, which is a very hard thing for youngsters to see. Now, when the knight comes to c6, you have to strike at the center. You've already blocked your c pawn, so the only other pawn advance is the e pawn, pawn to e5. And Hammer could have made the game a lot more boring by pushing, and probably Magnus would have actually brought the knight back to b1 and then rerouted it to c5. It's possible he would have gone to e7, but I've seen Magnus make that remaneuver in many games, and I think he would have done it here. Okay, but we'll never know, because instead we had this move h3, preventing the bishop from going to its natural square. And of course, you don't want to go to e6 because you'll just get forked with the move d5. So Magnus decides when the pawn comes to h3, it's actually very hard for white to ever play the move g3 because black will just be able to capture this pawn. So specifically because of h3, now black can play the move knight h5, and you can see how weak the f4 square is. Again, you can never push because you'll lose your h3 pawn. And if the knight moves here, you're just going to have to live with it. If you push after the knight moves to f4, there'll be double trouble on this pawn. Not to mention the fact that I've conveniently left the bishop hanging when the knight goes to f4. So white decided to capture, removing one of the defenders of the knight when it moves here. 9 times out of 10, I tell chess kids to answer an attack with an attack, or in this case, answer a capture with a capture. But remember, Magnus, he's destined for greatness. He realizes he doesn't have to capture back this pawn right away. Instead, he can play knight f4 with tempo. That's his first in-between move. So the bishop saved itself, and Magnus now captures the pawn. He captures with the knight. And after knight takes, he plays another in-between move. I think most mere mortals would capture this knight back with something. I'm not even sure which piece black should capture with. Maybe the pawn, because if you capture with the bishop, this move knight here is kind of annoying, and if you save the bishop, you actually lose your knight. Okay, but anyway, most normal people would capture the knight with something, but instead Magnus realizes here he can play another in-between move, queen g5, and threaten the entire world. Right now, black is threatening mate. Black is also threatening knight takes pawn because the pawn on g2 would be pinned, and black is also threatening bishop takes pawn, which would triple attack the move g2. So white needs a good move, and white needs a good move in a hurry, so white plays a move knight to g4, which saves the knight, blocks the checkmate, and blocks any of the tricks on the h3 pawn. But of course Magnus saw that, and his queen swings all the way over and captures the bishop anyway. Black is definitely a little bit better with the bishop pair and the strong knight, but watch how quickly black converts this game. After the move knight to b3, we have knight e2 check. Now at first it might just look like Magnus is going to get both bishops and play 2 bishops versus 2 knights, but he has something else in mind. After king to h1, I don't know if the girl's name Anastasia or Anastasia is popular in Norway, but we're about to have Anastasia's mate. I hope you know that one. We've got a video about it on ChessKid. Magnus captures the knight, which forces the H file open. And as you can see, in Anastasia's mate, the knight takes away the king's ability to get off the side of the board. We just need an up and down mover. Yeah, that's a technical term. We need a long range piece. We need a heavy, a rook or a queen to get to the H file. And of course, you can't play queen h5 just yet because you'll lose your queen, you'll be embarrassed, and you probably won't be world champion. So Magnus gets more puppies in the party by playing rook e8, and white decides to play the move bishop to e3, just giving away the pawn, because frankly, if white played a move like f3, the knight would come give a fork, it would be pretty bad. So Magnus takes the free pawn, and after rook to e1, it looks like his knight's trapped. This was the entire idea by white, by playing the move bishop here, trying to make sure that that knight maybe had nowhere to go. Now, you could kind of maybe sort of argue the knight could sneak out to this square, but you would argue that that's not the best move, because there's actually a mate in 2. Here comes Anastasia, knock, knock, knock. Hello, queen h5, and you can see here it is mate in 1. Hammer had to give it up and resign because there's no other legal move than pawn takes queen, but that opens up the rook to come sideways, and that would have been a pretty way to finish. I think that the etiquette in chess is that when your opponent plays a beautiful mate, you should allow it to happen on the board, but you know, these were 13-year-old boys, it never feels good to lose, so I'm not surprised that white just resigned. They would both go on to become part of Norway's national team, and of course Magnus would go on to become world champion, knowing cool ideas like this.